My name is Jenny Sullivan. I'm the Assistant Director of the Study Abroad and Fellowships Office, and I am the International Fellowships Coach and Advisor here on campus. So anytime you want to apply for an internationally focused scholarship or fellowship to help you study abroad, or to help you go to grad school overseas, or to do a project overseas, I'm the person that you can talk to about finding opportunities, helping you build persuasive applications, and then celebrating your success. I want to take a quick show of hands really quick. How many of you are first or second year students? Okay. Third or fourth year? Okay. Grad students? Excellent. Okay. Perfect. The Fulbright, the particular international fellowship I'm going to talk about today, in order to be eligible to apply for this next application cycle, you will need to have earned your undergraduate degree by the time your award starts. So that would be by next May, a year from this May. So as a third year, if you're graduating a 4-year program, you will line up perfectly. Okay. Did you find it okay?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. How many of you are honor students? Oh, fantastic. Okay, good. Okay. So a fellowship is basically a fancy word for scholarship. And fellowships tend to be a little bit more prestigious, maybe a little bit more competitive, and that also means a lot more money. Typically, but not always, there not for undergrads, but for graduate and beyond, young professionals and things like that, but that's not always necessarily the case. The Fulbright Fellowship is a really unique international fellowship. I love this program. I love it especially for our students because it has the widest range of countries you can go to. It has a large flexibility of what you can actually do when you're in one of these countries. I also like it because while it's very, very competitive and very, very prestigious, it's also one of the ones that is most open and looking for diverse, well-rounded, passionate candidates. Some of the other fellowships you might encounter, like the Mitchell or the Marshall or the Rhodes, are really to do one thing, earn a master's degree, to go to one place, and they're looking for one type of student, and that is the elite 3.9 GPA and above, academic, focused superstar. And what I like about Fulbright is they allow you to be a little bit more creative and a little bit more well-rounded, okay? and multidisciplinary. Not that the other fellowships aren't worthy, they are, but this is one of the reasons I love Fulbright for our students. So the Fulbright is a special fellowship or grant that will help you study, research, or teach English in another country. Okay, I'm going to delve into that deeper. As I mentioned, it's for graduating seniors, graduate students, early career professionals. So even if you don't apply this year or you do apply and you want to apply again as an alum or a young professional, you can still work with me. Actually, there's no age limit. You could be a 40-year-old professional and still apply for the Fulbright. Teachers and creative and performing artists. So the award is sponsored by the U.S. Department of State and the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. It's a U.S. government-funded, partially government-funded program. Because they sponsor it, their websites, which you'll find here, and I will email you a copy of this presentation so you don't have to worry about taking so many notes, has great general information about the Fulbright. These websites give you a really good overview about the program, and sometimes to supplement this info session, it could be a good place to start, as opposed to the website you're going to be living and breathing with every day where you're actually applying. Can be a little bit confusing to navigate. So if you're looking at sort of the big picture, these are good places to go. So the Fulbright program was started in 1946 by an act of Congress. It was really championed by Senator J. William Fulbright because he saw this need, this desire, had this desire to increase the mutual understanding between cultures, to really have cultures immerse themselves in each other's values in an effort to understand each other better and appreciate each other more, and really with this lofty goal to make the world a better, more peaceful place. This is really important for you to remember when you're building. Come on in, no problem. Thank you. This is so important for you to remember. This is the entire purpose for the Fulbright Fellowship. So as you are developing your project ideas and as you are creating and communicating your very persuasive application materials, you must constantly ask yourself, am I doing this? Does my project do this? And am I communicating well in my application materials that my project does this? Okay? It's about what are you going to bring to this country and what are you going to get out of the experience. So many of my applicants forget that. What am I going to provide them? It's all about what am I going to get. I'm going to get to work with experts in my field. I'm going to earn the master's degree. I'm going to take language classes while I'm there and become fluent. Me. Okay? So, to be eligible for the Fulbright Student Program, I want to make sure you guys all understand there are many programs under the Fulbright umbrella, and you will be applying for the Fulbright Student Program. There's a Fulbright Scholar Program. Many of our faculty on campus have been Fulbright Scholars. This is for people at the PhD level, faculty and administrators, who also want to go overseas and teach or do research, but you are not applying for the Scholar Program. There's also an incoming Fulbright program for international students who want to come to the U.S. to study or do research. In fact, RIT is hosting 12 to 15, I think, currently on campus here, who might be good resources for you in some of your research as you're learning about the Fulbright. But that's a different program as well. And you might stumble upon some of these websites when you're Googling Fulbright, and I just want to make sure you're focusing on the correct ones. So you must be a U.S. citizen by the application deadline, which is in October. You must have at least a bachelor's degree or equivalent by the start of your overseas program, not the deadline. Okay. So you will have, I mentioned this while you were out really quick, but and we're going to talk about the timeline in a second, but the ideal time for you to be eligible to apply this next application cycle, which will be this fall, is to be a third year right now. We work with you all spring, the rest of the spring and summer, so that you submit your application the fall of your senior, your fourth year. You graduate in May, and then your overseas experience would start the following fall. But, again, if you're a fourth year or graduate student, we work with you still. You're just going to have to work for a year or something else. Find an internship for a year between the time you graduate and the time your award would start. Okay? I'll go over this timeline in a little bit more details in just a second. You can't have your doctorate by the application deadline. Anybody in here have their doctorate? Not yet, right? And then you must have proficiency in the language of the host country, and that varies by country. I don't want this to scare anybody away, because in most cases the countries are going to say you need to have a level of language proficiency suitable for you to be able to complete your project. So if your project proposal is that I go do a master's degree program in France in an English-speaking program, the level of language that you're going to need is minimal. Okay. Now, does learning the language and making an effort to at least be conversational by the time you arrive increase that mutual understanding between cultures? And also, in a very competitive and prestigious application process, does it sort of prove how motivated and gung-ho and passionate that you are? Absolutely. So if you want to go somewhere where you have no language abilities or skills at all, now is the time to be starting to think about getting some of those skills, and the more formally you're doing that, the better. take a class online or at MCC this summer or in your home city. Take a community class at a local community group. Enroll in a beginning class in the fall. Buy Rosetta Stone or use our language lab. And the more you're showing that you're making a really serious effort, the better it's going to be. Okay? Now, if you are proposing to do a project where you are doing an ethnographic study of the native Quechua people in the Andes mountain range of Ecuador, and you're going to go and do extensive interviews with these people, then your level of the local knowledge is more extensive. Okay. What does the grant pay for? What's included? So you are receiving thousands of dollars. Okay, lots and lots of money. In general, it will fund your round-trip airfare to and from the country, a monthly stipend, and this monthly stipend will include enough money for you to pay for your housing, for you to, buy food and basic living expenses. You're not going to be living like kings and queens, but you're going to be comfortable, okay? And local transportation and things like that. Accident and sickness coverage, so insurance, and then other possible benefits could include support for dependents. If you're married or have children, some countries will help you, give you a small stipend to help support them. A research allowance if your project requires access to certain materials, or like I have a student who just won, we'll talk about this in a second, and she's going to be diving in the Philippines, and so her research requires her to have access to, getting out to the ocean and the equipment she's going to need and the lab space she's going to need. So her research award will likely include funds to cover those. Tuition. So if you're applying for the Fulbright to fund your studies overseas, a master's degree, or just taking some classes at an overseas university, it may or may not pay tuition. It's going to say this in your country summary when you're looking at each individual country, what they will cover and what they won't. In some cases, though, if it doesn't, I don't want it to freak you out, because one is that the overseas university often does waive the tuition, so you wouldn't have to pay it anyway. Or two, there's often other fellowships that you can apply for through the university itself, or like the Fulbright, that you could use to supplement those. Okay? But tuition is not guaranteed, and it's important that I point that out. Might pay for language lessons or other culturally enhancement activities that help you immerse in the culture, and maybe some disability-related accommodations and access services. This is a possibility as well. One thing I want to point out is that Fulbright doesn't say each student's getting $20,000. It doesn't work that way. Depending on the country you're going to, the cost of living, what your particular project is, two awardees in the same country might get different amounts. So let's talk about exactly the types of awards that you would win. What would you actually be doing while you're there? What's possible? There are two main types of grants in the U.S. student program. The first is the research/study grant. There are about 900 of these awards. All of them allow you to spend 8 to 12 months in the country, so it's basically an academic year. There are about 145 countries available to you to choose from. All the countries are listed on the Fulbright website, and each one will have summary information and more specific eligibility requirements, so it's really important to pay attention to those country summaries. And in these awards, you're allowed to either do independent research, study, or an arts project. So let me give you some examples. One of the things you could do is go and create and complete and propose a completely independent research project. You dream it up and you make it happen. Our three current winners who are currently overseas are doing this type of project. One of our awardees, Rose, went to Iceland. She was an imaging science major, and she's currently doing some remote sensing using LiDAR technology. I don't know all this. I've just read her thing a million times. So it sounds really good, though, doesn't it? To map the Hekla volcano in Iceland. And she's sending me great pictures, and it's awesome to see her out in the field. It's really, really cool. Another one of our awardees is currently overseas. Her name's Kaylin Beiter, and she is in Senegal, and she is doing AIDS research there in Senegal. And then another of our applicants who's currently abroad, her name's History, and she's in the Dominican Republic, and she was a international studies / interpreting, ASL interpreting major, and she is in the Dominican Republic to work with their government to develop a interpreter training program. They have no sort of certification process or necessary minimum standards of qualifications for their interpreters, and so she's developing that process and that evaluation. So you can see, yeah?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Hers?
Yeah.
So she went to the Dominican Republic. Does that mean that she's fluent in Spanish before she gets there, or?
It depends on the country.
Yeah.
So in her case, she was pretty fluent in Spanish. She sort of needs to be. She also had to become familiar in LISDOM, which is the LESDOM, which is the sign of the Dominican Republic. And a lot of it's based on American Sign Language, though. And she had also done an internship already in the DR. So she already had a lot of familiarity, and that actually helped her to really develop what her project was. So in a lot of cases, your project might develop from an experience you're having here on campus. It might be sort of the next natural steps to that. And I think that's a great way to have a basis of information, or an internship. If you're studying abroad, I think that's a great way for you to go and sort of get a lay of the land and what's needed, and start to network and meet people and develop some project ideas. So if you can study abroad this fall or next intersession, or even this summer, that would be awesome and a good preparatory for you. So they're all doing totally independent research. Another option, and actually I will tell you that you can see that Histories is a little bit more of a project. She's actually developing something very practical and useful and necessary. The other ones are much more scientific inquiry. Maybe they'll have an article or two that will come out of this lab-based. And so you can do any version of those. Same with the arts. You can go for the arts. We've had winners in photography go and create a body of work. You can apprentice with a dancer. You can do singing, other fine arts. So arts projects are available as well. The other option is to go have the Fulbright pay for study. Most often this is to pay for a master's degree in another country, typically only a 1-year degree. Sometimes Fulbright will fund a 2-year degree, so they'll renew your award, or sometimes they will pay for the first year of a 2-year program. If you don't have the local language or know the local language, you'll likely look for programs in English, and this is very, very, very common abroad. Okay? It's not that difficult to find programs abroad. So your project proposal would be proposing to earn a degree, and you would need to describe why you want to go overseas to earn your degree, what's the value in doing that, and how is it going to help you reach your long-term goals. Okay. You can also do a hybrid, and I'm learning from Fulbright that they really appreciate seeing these types of projects from undergrads, although I did point out, so the hybrid is a little bit of study and a smaller research project. So you might take a few classes at a local university that has sort of a niche or a real interest in what you want to learn more about, and your long-term goals, and do a smaller research project. They like seeing these types of programs from undergrads because they feel like it's a little bit overwhelming just showing up in a new country and living there for a year. They seem to see some students tend to flounder in their projects when they're just trying to acclimate to the new culture. I did, however, point out that all 3 of our winners last year are doing strictly research options, and that's sort of an anomaly, but I think it makes sense with our students and your familiarity with research and your scientific abilities. I think we just have sort of that niche. So I wouldn't be afraid to propose a strictly research project if that's what you're interested in. I will point out really quickly, I want you to notice that the projects I talked about, the examples I gave, are all, again, about scientific inquiry or helping the greater good, delivering some sort of practical project outcome that's really going to benefit people in the country. It's not necessarily about going to Africa and building wells or something like that. It's not supposed to be a charitable cause. It's more about the scientific, academic nature of the project, okay? Now, if you wanted to, however, go to Africa and evaluate and examine the success or lack of success of nonprofit organizations going in and building wells and the impact or the bad repercussions or the positive repercussions of something like that, now that could be a very interesting Fulbright project. Does that make sense? It also should not be commercial in any way. Working with a company, affiliated, partnering with a company, building a business, nothing like that. Consulting. Okay. Now, the other type of award that you can do is the English Teaching Assistantship, the ETA. There are about 1,200 of these awards available. It's also 8 to 12 months. There are about 75 countries. And you don't manage a whole classroom by yourself. You're there to help teach English and U.S. culture in a classroom setting. Okay? So you're there leading small, there's another, in most cases, another teacher there who's in charge of learning outcomes and lesson plans and classroom management and discipline and all that. You're there to supplement. So you might do tutoring, small group discussions, you might do some presentations, you might be involved in some clubs after school and things like that, okay? I lived in Ecuador for a year and taught English, not through the Fulbright, but just sort of on my own. So I have some insight if you're interested in this award that we could talk about as well. You don't necessarily have to be English majors, education majors, or wannabe teachers for this award. It's a much more sort of culturally immersive program. You should, however, especially if you don't necessarily want to be a teacher, you really should have some sort of teaching, mentoring, tutoring, coaching experience. And if you don't have that, do whatever you can to start getting that now. Sign up to be a tutor. Be a camp counselor this summer. Sign up for Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Be a TA in the fall. Do whatever you can to get some of that experience. Okay? In total, you'll see there's about 2,000 awards every year. They have about 10,000 applicants. The timeline. Let's talk about this in a little bit more detail. The actual application opens and you can start creating your application on March 31st. You can log into Fulbright's website, create your username and password, and start filling it in, log out, log back in, save, make changes, etc. We would really spend the next couple of months, you and I and Claire. I'm sorry, I'm not one to introduce you at the beginning. I am such a loser. Claire and Mary. Claire, can you wave? And Mary. Mary is our communications and tech guru in our office, so she's helping us do this awesome webinar and record it, so it will be on YouTube if you need to refer back to it. And Claire is my new advising guru and helper, and she's going to be helping advise and set up workshops and do all this too. So, but for the next couple of months, we're really going to work together to think about and develop what would your project be. And we're going to talk about how you would do that and what kind of research do you need to do and who should you reach out to. In June, July, I start to like to see first drafts of your essays, where I'm going to help you answer all your questions about the entire application process. So Jenny, you're asking me this, what do they really mean? Can we talk about, I'm reading between the lines of the country summary, how do I get more experience in this area, and things like that, all through the summer. And then you are required to submit your completed application by the campus deadline on September 11th this year. Your entire application must be complete. We're going to talk about what are the components of the application in a second. What happens then is I convene our campus committee, made up of faculty members who are themselves Fulbright awardees, or they have certain expertise in disciplines or regions of the world that you're going to. And they're going to review your applications. We're going to invite you all in for an interview individually. They'll interview with the committee. And based on your interview and your application, we're going to write an evaluation that's included with your final application. And they're also going to give you some last-minute feedback for minor changes and revisions. You're going to get your application back for a week. You're going to quickly make some changes and then submit it back to me. I attach the evaluation and send it to Fulbright. I'm actually the one who submits it to Fulbright. Okay. So after your first round of review is really the on-campus committee. You got to be ready for that. The second round of review, your application goes to the National Screening Committee. So Fulbright convenes committees made up of faculty members all over the country with certain discipline or region expertise. And they meet in New York City and Washington, D.C. and Chicago all through November and December. And they're reviewing all the applications and making decisions about whether you should be promoted to the third and final round of application review. And about the end of January, you would find out if you are recommended or not. If you're not recommended, then you're out of the competition for this year. If you're recommended, you move on to the next round. If you're not recommended, you can always apply again. You can apply again as many times as you want. You can apply to different countries with different projects, or you can use the same project, modify it a little bit. I wouldn't ever recommend using the same exact proposal because you wonder if you didn't make it the first time, or it depends how far you got. We would talk about that, but we need to beef it up, make some changes. But also sometimes I gotta tell you, your success in the Fulbright application process sometimes just depends on the applicant pool in a given year. And I will say in the 5 years I've been here, I have noticed that it's rising, the competition. People are getting smart about it. But, you know, we had an applicant last year. She had a fantastic proposal. They did everything right. She was recommended. She didn't win ultimately. She applied again this year. We polished it up. She was even more ready to go. Had a great internship in between the times that we added to that really made her even stronger candidate. I was sure she was going to get recommended again and even get it this year. This year she wasn't even recommended. It just tells you, you know, that year in that country, she might have had a totally different competition than she had this year. Now I will say, I just learned this week about our first winner for this year. It hasn't been announced campus-wide yet, but her name's Yasmin Smalley. She's an alum. She's graduated 2 or 3 years ago, and this was her third time applying. Last year she was an alternate. And she's just done the same thing, just improved and polished her experience just a little bit each year. And really, we got it together this year. So if you are recommended in January, then your application moves on to that third and final round of review, which is a commission within the country to which you are applying. And they look at all the applications. And again, like I said, sometimes it's a crapshoot. Sometimes they say, you know, we love this candidate's application for, forestry. We just had a winner last year in forestry, so we really want to mix it up this year. Or, you know, a lot of our finalists or winners last year were from large state institutions. We'd like to look at a more small private institution. This is why sometimes applying your second or third time is very, very common. And the great thing is you already have the foundation of a great application for Fulbright, other fellowships, graduate school, jobs. I'm telling you, you're going to be set. So each country makes their final decisions at different times. They all operate on different timelines. And so we start to hear the results anywhere from March through June. Okay? Like I said, they're just starting to trickle in. So what makes a good quality applicant? What is Fulbright looking for? And like I said, or maybe I didn't mention this to you guys yet, that there's no GPA minimum. When we looked at those eligibility requirements, you'll notice there's no minimum GPA. This is great because, like I said, Fulbright seems to be a little bit more well-rounded and accepting, and if you have a lower GPA but a great, fantastic, amazing project idea, they definitely want to look at you and consider you. That being said, there are 10,000 applicants for 2,000 awards. So when you've got 2 applications that they're comparing and they just can't decide, one of the things they're going to go back to is that GPA. So I really would hope, I don't have any minimum. If you have below a 3.0, I don't think this necessarily will work for you. And we could talk about other options, definitely. But a 3.5 and above is what I really prefer to see. You must have a really well-developed project idea. What makes a well-developed project? It's something that is valid and something that's feasible. Valid meaning it's important. It's going to have an impact. It meets that Fulbright goal of mutual understanding. And how do you prove that? You're going to do a lot of research. You're going to Find contextual information in your research about what the challenge is and why this is important. And you also got to prove that it's feasible. How is it that we know you can do what it is you set out to do within the parameters of space and time and resources and money that you're going to have access to? Okay? You need to have a high level of academic and or professional achievement. The best candidates have demonstrated leadership abilities, sufficient language proficiency, again that varies by the country, and some sort of community service or engagement orientation or priority passion. What makes a great candidate for an English teaching assistantship, and what exactly would you be doing? So your goal as the English teaching assistant is really to help improve the student's understanding of English language and culture. You're actually only going to work to that for you, but also something you can do. Now the thing about do on the side, it needs to be, again, valid and feasible, but you also need to think about not being too committed to that project because it needs to be able to be done wherever you're going to end up. One of the things I haven't mentioned yet, but that is really important, I don't want to leave without mentioning today, is that when you apply for the Fulbright, you can only apply for one country for one reason. You're putting all your eggs in one basket. You can't say, I want the master's degree in Spain, but if I don't get into this university, I want to get into this is my backup. It doesn't work that way. And you can't say, if I don't get into Guatemala, then I want to go to Peru. It doesn't work that way.
Could you apply in a way that you would...
For you, countries, so it's already hands down the most competitive. Then after that, Europe, crazy competitive. Where you're going to get a little bit more traction is if you're willing to be a little bit more flexible and go outside of your comfort zone a little bit more. So think about Eastern Europe, thinking about South America. You might have a little bit more chances and more luck. In some of our individual coaching, I do have access to statistics that says for the last 3 years how many applicants they've had for this country versus how many awards. And if you are, I don't like students to start there. I want you to have a passion for the country and the project. I don't want you to go, which country am I going to have the best choice? That's not the point of the Fulbright. But if you've got 2 great project ideas in 2 different countries, then we might pull that as a tool and say, well, they only get 5 applicants for 1 award in this country versus this country gets 30 applicants for 4 awards.
I'm just wondering about like Eastern Asia and South Asia, especially because I know obviously they speak a multitude of different languages,
Yes.
but a lot of people speak English,
Yes.
don't they?
Yes. India, absolutely. Yep. Singapore. Those would definitely be countries you want to look into.
So would
Could be
those,
possibilities.
so would those maybe be possibilities even if you didn't really speak the languages there?
Depends what your project is.
Okay.
So if you want to be in a rural village in India where they're only speaking Hindu or Urdu, you'll probably need to start learning some of those or have a basis of knowledge in those.
Okay.
Does that make sense? For the English teaching assistantship, again, I think I mentioned this, maybe I mentioned this in another group. You don't necessarily have to be an education major, an English major wanting to go into teaching. But you do have to have excellent communication skills. And if you think about it, your entire application is a first-hand account of your communication skills. I think for the English teaching, you'll see when we're going through the application components, the application itself is a little bit lighter, but I think they receive extra scrutiny because it is, right, like I said, a demonstration of your communication skills. So they're going to be even more, period out of place, gone. I also think the English Teaching Award is more competitive. Even if it has more awards available, I think it's more competitive because you get more students looking to have that, I had a great study abroad experience. I'd really love to go overseas again and have it paid for. Versus the research and study students tend to have a more clear vision of why they need to go and do what they need to do. And so it can be a little bit tougher competition to get through those English teaching applicants who are like, I love the Greek food. I've had applicants write this and it drives me crazy. I love Greek food. The Greek culture is so beautiful. I want to step out of my comfort zone and expand my horizons, and so I'd like to go to Greece and eat the food. I'm like, that is not cutting it because you're going to come up again, students who have been studying Greek language, who have been studying Greek philosophy for years, who have a real knowledge and passion and demonstrated, have been a part of the Greek American community in Rochester for 3 years just because they're gung-ho about it. You know, you really have to have a passion for a demonstrated passion and evidence of your desire to really go to this country. Again, I don't want to scare you. If you don't have this yet or don't think it's up to par yet, start doing something about it now. Find out what is the Greek American community and join it and go to some of their events and take a class in Greek philosophy and start to build some of that. So you also must be very flexible, adaptable, open. ETAs are generally more culturally immersed because they can be in more rural areas among the community, whereas sometimes when you're doing your research and study, you're in more academic settings with a lot of international people, right? So demonstrated leadership and service. Host language proficiency, again, varies by country. In general, because you're going to be teaching English and working mostly in English and they want you to speak English, you can have less language requirements, but not always. And then the cultural project. Again, I must stress, each country is different, so make sure you're reading those very carefully. I happen to know in Asia, in East Asia, you are not allowed to do the side research project at all, period. They don't want you to. So these are some things we'll talk about in our coaching too. There are a few special award opportunities I want to point out really quickly. These are, in order to be eligible for these two, you must be a master's student. So those of you that aren't master's level right now, but might be eventually, you might come back and file this away as something you would do in the future. But if you're master's level now, this might be something you're interested in. This one, the Fulbright Clinton Fellowship, is very interesting, especially for students interested in public policy, economics, political science. In this award, you're actually being placed in a foreign government's ministry, and you're working as basically a political science intern in a Ministry of Education or something like that. Again, you must be master's level. There's only 11 countries available. One of our finalists right now is actually for this award. Cool. Fulbright Fogarty Award is a specialty program which, especially for conducting research in public health, nutrition, and your experience is going to be more in a clinical setting. It's especially for medical students. And again, it's limited to certain countries, and you must be a graduate student. One more special opportunity I will talk about, a general special opportunity. Each country might have their own special opportunities that's unique to that country, so that's something to consider or look at. But like, for example, I just mentioned, if you're a journalism major, there are certain countries that have awards just for journalism students. So that might be something for you to think about. If you're a master's student interested in deaf cultural studies, there's a particular award in Italy just to do deaf cultural studies. So making sure you're looking at some of those options as well and talking to me and I can help you find those. So this is the Fulbright National Geographic Fellowship. So Fulbright has partnered with National Geographic to offer an award where a student does a project in another country. And this is one award that can be a multi-country project, where they are examining something and using media to tell a digital story of sort of National Geographic-like proportions. So intense blogs and making a documentary and things like that. Now this award is extremely competitive. 800 applicants for 4 or 5 positions. Yasmin, our winner in the Philippines I just found about, she really wanted to do this. Her project would have worked, but I said, you know what, Yasmin, I think you have much better luck just going through the Philippines regular country award. As I understand it, what Fulbright tells me is successful students in this program must already be sort of established with an online presence. They must sort of already have a couple documentary films under their belt. Okay? I would encourage, if this is something that you're interested in, of course, we would support you and we would go for it. But I would look at some of the past winners, see what sort of their projects are, and make sure that you're sort of on par. Okay? So what is involved in the application? The entire application is online. Again, like I said, I think it opens March 31st, so you can go ahead and create an account, log in, log out. They're going to ask you a bunch of personal data, first of all, basic demographic data. When all is said and done, your entire application is going to be something like 25 pages. It's intense. All the personal data is stuff like everything from your resume, every job, every award you've ever won, every time you've ever been overseas and for how long, in which countries, and why. They're really trying to get a big picture of who you are. One of the main pieces are your essays. Every applicant has 2 essays. The first essay is called your Statement of Grant Purpose. For those of you proposing to do independent research or a research/study, this is going to be 2 pages. That's it. For English teaching, it's just 1 page. And the purpose of this essay is to really prove that validity and that feasibility of your project. So how do we know it's important? You're going to do basically a miniature lit review, and you're going to bring in other sources and say, here's the context of the situation and the problem that I'm going in there to help solve. And that's proving that this is necessary and important, and you're going to have an impact. Then you're going to outline what is your project, what are you actually going to do, and how are you going to do it. So that answers some of that feasibility question. Then you're going to talk about how do we know that you are the right person, that you have the skills and experience necessary to do this well and to succeed. That's also part of that feasibility argument, right? This is really sort of a cut and dry professional document. Each of your essays you can go through at least 7 to 8 revisions with us. The second essay is a 1-page for everybody, personal statement. This one allows you to be a little bit more, to display a little bit more of your personality, to be a little bit more raw, but still professional, not too raw. And to be a little more authentic. You could use humor, you could admit a failure or regret, but what they want to demonstrate is some reflective thinking, some maturity of thought, some intentionality. And they're really asking or trying to determine what motivates you. And who are you as a person, and how did you get that way? What challenges have you faced as a kid? Maybe you'll talk about the impact of growing up in a divorced home and how that shaped who you are and how who you are makes you a good candidate for Fulbright, right? Maybe you'll talk about a mentor or an author or a book you've read or something that's really had a huge impact on you and influenced you and really describes and you think illustrates who you are and why you are the person that you are. But you really have to demonstrate, again, some reflective thought. I was talking to another counselor once, and he said he does a writing prompt exercise, and he asks the students to provide their favorite quote. And the student provided a quote from Gandhi that said, be the change you want to see. And so he said, oh, I love that quote. That's great. So tell me more. What does that mean? What change do you want to see? And the student was like, I don't know. So we want you to think about and demonstrate some reflection on some of these things and pull in other sources and to think about that. The next part of your application you have to provide are some reports and references. So every single one of my applicants has to at least do the language self-evaluation, even if your project in your country does not require a lot of the local language. This is very simple. It's you saying, I consider myself to be a beginning speaker or conversational speaker of this language. I know I would evaluate my skills as pretty darn good, and I learned this by studying 3 hours a week on Rosetta Stone or something like that. At bare minimum, I want every student to submit one of these.
What grade do you give them?
If it's formal language classes, it would maybe be on your transcript. But that's the real only proof I can think of.
So it's not like you're actually taking an exam.
Well, now that's the bare minimum. If your project or your country requires a little bit more of the local language, then you're going to do a second language evaluation, which is an evaluation by a native speaker. In that case, you would sit down with probably a professor on campus and have a conversation in the language, likely for 15, 20 minutes, and they're going to log into your application and evaluate you. Okay? But not every student has to do that. Depends. You're going to submit all your transcripts, your official transcripts, from all the academic institutions in the U.S. where you have received formal credit. You're going to open them up, make them unofficial, scan them in, and upload them to your application. And then for the research or study students, you will have an affiliation letter. I'm going to talk about what the affiliation is in one more second. Special opportunities might have special requirements, maybe an additional essay, or students applying in the arts will definitely have to submit a portfolio. If you are a graphic design major or something, and you're not sure should you apply, but you're applying to a master's program, these are some of the things we need to work out. Should you apply in the arts and submit a portfolio or not? Okay, so some things to consider. Now, what is an affiliation? An affiliation is an in-country mentor-partner relationship. It's somebody at a relevant institution or organization has agreed that you've reached out to and that you've connected with, shared your project ideas with, and they have said, I love it. It sounds great. We need you and we need this project. We agree to support you in this project. This is Fulbright helping with that feasibility, right? If you were to just show up in the country for a year and not know necessarily where to start, at least your in-country affiliate and partner is going to help you do that. Now, the relationship that you have with this mentor or this sponsor depends on you and your sponsor and your program and your project and what's needed. It could be as extensive as they provide you with lab space, office space, equipment. They connect you with resources. They could be housing the research project themselves and you're just joining their team. So it's going to be a very close relationship. I will say that the closer your relationship, the better. The more resources and help they're going to provide and oversight, the better. Or it could be, something a little bit more you meet for coffee every month. I don't know. You can also have more than one affiliate. I wouldn't recommend having many more than that. Having 10 affiliates in one country is not going to make you look more connected. It's going to make you look more scatterbrained, right? And like you're all over the place and you're making commitments and you're going to get influence from all these people and you're less likely to be able to complete your project and focus, right? Because you will have some certain responsibilities in this affiliate. But for example, we had a winner a few years ago who was a photography student. She was a master's student, and her area of expertise in her master's capstone was on taking images and documenting the slow food movement. And so she was going to Finland, and she wanted to continue this project. So she had one affiliation with a university who could help her have access to lab space and places to present her work and computer equipment and things like that, and assistance with the technical skills of her photography, right? And then she had an affiliation with a nonprofit that could help her have access to the places and the people she wanted to photograph, farmers markets, local community gardens, and things like that, okay? And that makes a lot of sense. So what your affiliate is going to provide you is a letter on formal letterhead. They're going to send it. It's going to say, we love this person. We love this project idea. This is how we agree to support them. They're going to send you the letter. You're going to upload it to your application. Not every country requires an affiliation letter. So you have to look at the country summaries. Although, even if it doesn't, but you are self-motivated enough to make those connections and do that, what do you think that says? Right? Especially in a tough competition pool. If you're applying to do the master's degree or study abroad, in another university, your affiliation is basically your acceptance letter from the program. Okay? Or if you're not quite accepted to admissions to the program yet, then maybe you outreach or network with a professor in the department you're applying to, and they send a letter that says something like, your Fulbright process is so long and so early, it doesn't line up with our admissions process, because it never will. So we're still evaluating candidates, but I've had conversations with the student. I think he or she would be an excellent addition to our program. They seem to meet all of our criteria, and I hope we are able to accept them. We might include that. Okay. Your affiliation can be it's most likely with a university, but it can be a nonprofit. It could be a museum if you're in the arts. It could be a lab. It could be a library, think tank, a government ministry, something like that. Okay. And in some of our coaching, we can help you think about what would be a good affiliation, what support would they provide, and how do I go about finding places, and how do I go about reaching out to them in a way that sounds professional and doesn't seem like I'm stalking and that kind of stuff. It's important to note that English teaching assistants do not get affiliations at all. They don't need them. We don't want you to get them because you're going to be placed. Right? Again, this is just reminding you that everything's online and that you have to go through my process and work with me. I'm sorry. All this coaching help. But what I want you to do, if you're really serious and you want to get started, there's a few things that you really must do. The first thing is I want you to attend our workshops. So in April, the first 3 weeks of April, we're going to do a 3-part workshop. We're going to offer them at the noon hour on Wednesdays and Thursdays. You can choose one to attend a week. And I think the first one is April 6th. And by the end of that workshop, what we're really hoping you'll have is a really good project outline. Some resources you can look at, some countries you've examined, a few potential affiliates, and sort of maybe a research question even that you want to answer, some thoughts for some next steps, and really have some meaty next step. And it's really nice that we do it in a workshop setting because that allows us to help all of you at the same time. Cuts down on our individual coaching. After that, we'll start to do more individual coaching, and we'll definitely be working with you within those workshops to work on your ideas to personalize it. I also want you, and that you must do right away, is make an appointment with either your academic librarian in the Wallace Center, or if you're applying for the master's degree program, with an advisor in the Co-op and Career Services Center. If you're applying for a master's degree program, please meet with somebody in Career Services because they're going to give you some really good tools for 1, finding programs, for 2, determining what's a good program overseas and vetting it and evaluating it, and for helping you think about, how do I know this program is for me? Because remember, when you're applying to do the master's degree with the Fulbright, you have to prove to everybody in that 3-tiered evaluation process, 1, that you have to get your degree overseas. Why? There are so many good programs in the U.S. What is it about going overseas that's really important, that's going to help you meet your unique long-term goals? And second, you need to, once you do that, now you're opening up an even bigger can of worms. How do you prove to them that you have to go to this particular university? Now you go to any university in the world. Why this one? What is it about the topic and the niche, the expertise that they have? What is about the expertise and experience and research that their faculty are doing that you would get to be a part of? What is it about the way they teach or the experiences they include in their curriculum? Maybe it's an internship or something like that. So your academic advisor, your advisor in the Career Services Office is going to help you think about some of those things. The other, if you're going to do a study project or a research project, I really want you to meet with your academic librarian. They're going to point you to a whole bunch of resources for helping you use the tools in the library to do good searches, to find good data, to help you build that validity argument, to give you that contextual framework for proving that your project is going to have an impact. And if you have no idea what your project is, to help you figure out what it should be. To look at that data, to read between the lines, to understand where can I develop a project that fits. Okay? Then, before you leave in May, I want you to come meet with us. Have at least one sit-down meeting with us individually where we go through your project plan that we've developed in the workshops. We sort of get a sense for what you're going to do. We put together a plan and sort of a timeline of goals for the next couple of months and where you should be in the process, okay? Other things you could do, and I would really encourage you to do in the next 6-7 weeks before you leave for the summer, are start to do things like research past awardees. On Fulbright's website, there's a link that says Grantee Directory, and you can see every winner ever. Talk to past RIT applicants. I can connect them with you. They're happy to do this. Connect on YouTube. In just a second, I'm going to show you, there's YouTube pages and webinars and blogs from past winners, and there's a ton of information out there. Get a sense for what are other students doing, what's the Fulbright process really like, and how do I really choose a country, things like that. Reach out to Fulbright peer advisors. Fulbright themselves has past winners who have agreed to coach students and answer your questions. Reach out to your mentors and professors. I can't tell you enough how important this is, especially before you go away for the summer. To be asking for a letter of recommendation in July when you've been gone for 2 weeks and it's a professor you had 2 or 3 years ago is going to be a tough sell. So before you leave in May, go sit down and in all of your professors' appointment hours, right? Past professors, current professors, and start to prime that pump. Start to build that relationship. Whether it's they're going to write you letters of recommendation down the road, whether they can help you develop your project idea, that you say, here are some of my thoughts, here are the things I'm really interested in, what do you think? They might say, oh, well, have you read this research, or I just heard this article, or you should consider this. They can help you develop that. Or to connect you with overseas affiliates. Do you have connections in this country? Could I reach out to them? Would you introduce me? You're going to have much more luck with your affiliates if you can get that warm introduction. So with your mentors, with professors, and with people with whom you think might be able to help you that you haven't even met yet. Do some research. Take them out to coffee. Be intentional. I can give you tools to help you do this. And go through the Fulbright website very thoroughly. It's down here. I'm going to email it to you. But there are gems of information embedded, 5, 6, 7 links into this website that can be kind of hard to find. So make sure you're looking through that thoroughly and reading things. There's a section on application tips and things like that. Make sure you're reading all that. So Claire and I are your main contacts. Our role is, like I said, to guide and coach you through the entire application process to help you communicate most persuasively and effectively, to revise your essays, to keep you informed, to give you tips and further instructions as we go along, to manage the committee review process. I am actually the one who writes your final evaluations and submitting your applications. And then when you win, celebrating your success. And when you don't win, you can cry on my shoulder. We're going to be really, 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 really good friends for the rest of our lives. I'm serious. You're going to have a mentor and an advocate and a fan in me forever. And I am friends with all of my applicants on Facebook, and they're coming to visit me and all sorts of stuff. Okay. And I just want to point out one more thing is that if Fulbright, you go through this presentation and you think it's not necessarily for me, or maybe this is cool, what other things are out there like it, you might visit our website, which is fellowships.rit.edu. We're in the process of updating it, and hopefully in the next couple months it's going to be even more robust. But there are tons of international opportunities out there to fund graduate study or research or a project. So check it out. You might do it as a backup plan. You might do it to help apply for something to help supplement your Fulbright. You might propose something totally different. And I'm here to help you and coach you through all of those applications as well. Okay? Any questions?
You said that there was an evaluation by a native speaker of the language?
Maybe.
Maybe. Well, if there is, do they appoint somebody to evaluate you? Do you have to find somebody?
You have to find somebody. It's most typically a professor on campus. If we don't have a language professor on campus, maybe it's a language professor at another university locally. But you and I would work through that.
But it has to be a professor.
Most likely, yes. But again, if you're trying to do if it's Urdu, and we can't find a professor locally, but we can find another professor in engineering or in science or in liberal arts who happens to be a native speaker, then we'll see if this person can do it. So we're looking for a formal academic reference. Good question. Anything else? Yeah. I can go grab one. Claire, do you mind going grabbing my business cards there on my desk next to my computer? Thank you. Absolutely.
And also, is it just for out of the United States, or is there anything available for the United States?
This is only for you to go outside of the United States. And all the fellowships I advise, and you'll find on my website, are all for international experiences, or there's a very few that would be for like earning a master's degree in some international field in the U.S. that likely has some sort of international component, like an internship or something like that. So there are tons of fellowships for you to do research and study in the U.S. We just don't handle those in our office.
If
you're doing a BSMS program, and like you finish your BS after your 4th year, but then you have like one more
Right.
semester, and then you will
Your
have finished your
MS.
master's.
Mhm.
What do you do?
What do you do and when do you apply? So that's a very good question. There's a couple things we would consider. You would be eligible for the Fulbright after you've gotten that BS. So maybe you could think about negotiating with your department to delay the master's semester a year to do a Fulbright experience. This could be potentially very possible. The Fulbright is very, very prestigious. It looks as good for RET and the department and the country you're going to and those organizations as it does for you. So that's not uncommon.
How, if you get accepted, do you have a specific start date? Like, would you work a summer internship and then start your Fulbright?
You
Does it start
could.
immediately?
It varies by country, and that's something you negotiate with the country when you're accepted.
Okay.
Yes. And I will mention there's a critical language enhancement award if you're going somewhere where you feel like you would really benefit from having more knowledge of the language first. There are a few countries, look on the Fulbright website, where you can apply for an additional Fulbright, like a 3 to 6 month Fulbright, where you go to your country before your actual part would start, and you spend 3 to 6 months just doing intensive language study at a language school. Then you spend another year there actually doing your Fulbright, and that's pretty awesome too.
Is that more competitive?
It's competitive, yeah. And they don't do that usually for English teaching. But that's something, it's not every country. But look into that as well.
I'm a second year with a really
Yes.
nice status. Can I come back next year?
Absolutely, and you missed my talk to all of them at the very beginning. If you're a first or a second year, I think that's awesome because you have the benefit of time. I'm asking these guys to be strategic and intentional, but they only have, 6 months to do it. We could sit down with you. I encourage you to come to the workshop still because you and I, what we could do is think about, this is my big dream. I'm going big or I'm going home. And if I want to reach this big dream and goal, here are some of the things I could be doing in the next 2 or 3 years to get me to that point and make me really competitive. So I have students in your seat, in here all the time, show up year after year after year.
So I'm a third year, but would it be possible also, I don't know for sure if I want to do this, but to apply for not the year after I graduate, but the year after, so the year not, yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
You can apply, and you can apply and should apply with me unless you enroll in a U.S. master's degree program between here and there, and it's not RIT, then you'll probably work with your U.S. master's degrees office to apply. Yeah. Any other questions? I'm going to send you an email with the workshop information, with the link to this PowerPoint, with the webinar link if you want to watch it again, because I know you loved hearing me talk about all this for so long. And I would encourage you to tell your friends to come to the workshops and check it out, or reach out to me and to watch the webinar and to apply to it. Okay? Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Did everybody sign in?